Imagine yourself teaching a physical education class. A student starts running around, flailing his arms, yelling and making screeching sounds, and covering his ears with his hands. You approach the student and try to explain that the behavior is inappropriate and try to calm him down. The student does not understand your comments and begins to rock back and forth, looks very anxious, starts hitting his head with his hands, and continues the screeching noise. Now, imagine yourself as the student standing in a physical education class. Your clothes feel itchy and heavy on your body. You hear many other children talking, yelling, voices echoing throughout the gym. There's music playing, balls bouncing, lights buzzing, and sneakers screeching on the floor. You see balls moving through the air, cones and equipment scattered on the floor, and many other children moving around in all sorts of directions. You don't know how to process all of this commotion going on in the gym, so you cover your ears, make loud noises with your mouth to drown out the noise, wander away from the group of kids, and start rocking back and forth to calm yourself. This may be what a typical physical education class feels like for a child with autism spectrum disorder. It's common for kids with autism to say that these situations affect how they function in PE class. With the significant increasing prevalence of autism spectrum disorder, it is very likely that most general physical education teachers will have students with autism in their classes. Therefore, general PE teachers will likely work closely with the student's parents, special education teacher, adapted physical education teacher, IEP teams, and students with autism in developing realistic individual goals. The purpose of this video is to provide both general and adapted physical education teachers with visual supports to utilize for students with autism in PE. Research has demonstrated that visual supports increase comprehension, engaged physical activity time, and social interactions for students with autism spectrum disorder. In the next 20 minutes, many visual supports will be described and demonstrated to help you assist students with autism in the physical education setting. According to Fittipaldi-Wirth and Molding, autism is the fastest growing developmental disability. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention estimate that approximately 1 in 68 children are diagnosed with autism, and it is 5 times more common in boys than in girls. There's no known cause of autism, but many factors are suspected. Children with autism often have delays in social reciprocity and expressive and receptive language. They also have delayed or low language comprehension and production. Echolalia, the routine replication of words and phrases, is a prevalent language characteristic in children with autism. Many of these characteristics have an impact on participation in PE because students with autism struggle to process all of the sensory input that occurs around them in the gym. In the physical education setting, many children with autism show fundamental motor skill deficits. Locomotor skills, such as running, jumping, and skipping, and object control skills, such as catching, throwing, dribbling, and striking, are delayed in many students with autism. There is a great need for motor and object-controlled skill development interventions for students with autism. DeBolt and colleagues have found that early intervention programs have shown the best results when developing gross and fine motor skills. Children with autism perform meaningful movements easier than non-meaningful movements, meaning the actions they perform need to have a goal. For example, in Capture the Flag, the goal of the game is to capture all of the other team's flags. Students with autism need to be told why are they trying to gather all the flags in order for the movement to have meaning. Children with autism are placed on a continuum. A diagnosis of autism can be classified from mild to severe. Children with autism have a wide range of abilities, and no two children with autism are the same. There has been a recent change in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, the DSM-4, to the DSM-5. In the DSM-5, children are no longer being diagnosed with having Asperger's or Rett syndrome. They are placed on an autistic spectrum. Children who require very substantial support may be solitary and withdrawn and can be nonverbal. Children who require very substantial support may be solitary and withdrawn and can be nonverbal. Children who require substantial support may not initiate interactions, but act in a passive way when approached. And children who require minimal support may be active in interactions that can seem awkward to other children.
Children with autism can be very literal when interpreting things, situations, or objects. For instance, if a student was running and you said to them, "Wow, you're really flying," they might reply with, "I'm not flying, I'm running." Another example would be telling the student with autism to run home when playing baseball. This might confuse the student and they would literally leave the gym and run to their house.
Children with autism learn differently than their typically developing peers. They have hypersensitivities, meaning they're overstimulated, or hyposensitivities, meaning they're understimulated. Some senses that can be affected by these are auditory, like loud noises, music playing, kids screaming, and shoes screeching. Visual, where to go in open space, equipment scattered everywhere, children running everywhere. Tactile, the feel of the equipment, texture of a basketball, a tag on a shirt, or shoes that are tied too tight. Olfactory, like the smell of the equipment, lotion, perfume, or body odor. And kinesthetic, body awareness and how to move your body and perform an activity. Many children with autism also have trouble processing auditory information, meaning they have strong visual processing or they learn by seeing, not hearing. Visual supports are one way to help students with autism understand the tasks and activities presented to them in physical education. Structure and routine are necessities when teaching children with autism. Both can help prevent meltdowns or tantrums and help make transitions easier. Many children with autism also have trouble processing auditory information, meaning they have strong visual processing or they learn by seeing, not hearing. Visual supports are ways to help students with autism understand the tasks and activities presented to them in a physical education setting. Many types of instructional supports have been shown to increase social interactions, improve skill development, and increase on-task behavior in students with autism in PE. Visual supports combined with a physical demonstration allows children with autism to focus on the visual processing and minimize the auditory information.
A finding from a 2013 study by Liu and Breslin found that visual supports followed by minimal verbal commands help students with autism to understand the task presented to them. They should be used with a positive motivator and can include a reward like free time, iPad time, or an edible treat. In the next section of the video, I'll discuss several common visual supports that can be utilized for students with autism in the physical education setting and how these visual supports can be used with assessment.
A social story is a common visual support used with children with autism. In the book, Meeting the Physical Education Needs of Children with Autism Spectrum Disorder by Alexander and Schwager, social stories are described as individualized stories designed to increase acceptable social exchanges. They are read prior to an activity as a prompt for expected behavior and conversation. They can be shown on an iPad, smartboard, or in a booklet. Some example situations for which stories can be written for include locker room procedures, swimming procedures, and field trips. For instance, if your class was taking a bus trip to a local pool, the social story would include procedures on how to act on the bus, at the pool, and in the locker rooms. Activity schedules are another common visual support that are used for children with autism. These can be very effective and are commonly used in general and adapted PE and can be expanded for a student with autism. An activity schedule helps with transitions, provides consistency, and gives a student a routine in the classroom and gym setting. They use pictures or words and are arranged in vertical order on a whiteboard with Velcro. The student's name is at the top of the board with an envelope for completed tasks at the bottom. Times for each task can be included. For assessment, each activity being assessed can be on the schedule. When the student has completed one activity of the assessment, they can place a picture in the envelope at the bottom. This will allow the student with autism to see what activities they have completed and what still has to come. Picture Exchange Communication System, or PECS, are drawings that represent an object or skill with a description written above. They can be attached to a lanyard or keychain and worn by the teacher or on an iPad or iPhone. They can be pulled out to show the student what activity you want them to perform or what activity is coming next. Some examples of skills include sit, stand, check schedule, throw, and catch. Task cards are similar to PECS. They can have specific exercise or tasks to be completed on them. PECS and task cards can be made on programs like BoardMaker. When completing assessments, PECS and task cards can be shown to the student with autism to show them what activity they have to perform. Students with autism often have trouble with transitioning from activity to activity. Visual warning devices let students know when an activity is ending and it is time to transition to the next. Some examples of visual warning devices are a timer, stopwatch, clock, or iPad. This helps the students plan and organize themselves for the next activity. Visual warning devices can show the students how much time they have to perform an activity or how much time is left during assessment. Boundaries designate an exact area where a task will be performed by the student. Boundaries promote independence and provide students with more time to organize movements in space. Examples of objects that create boundaries are cones, polyspots, floor tape, or high mats to block students' view from other activities that are going on in different parts of the gym. Visual demonstrations are useful in any physical education setting. They help improve inaccuracies in timing, force, and amplitude when imitating movements. Autism can imitate movements better if the action is meaningful, goal-oriented, and motivating. You need to make sure that you have their full attention or they'll have difficulty understanding the task. Mirroring the image or standing beside the student is best when demonstrating a movement to a student with autism. This strategy allows them to see exactly what they are supposed to do, not the opposite. Utilizing peer modeling as a demonstration can be a useful tool in a large class. When assessing a student with autism, visual demonstrations can help a student to see what action they're supposed to perform and how to move their body. Technology, such as an iPad, is a useful visual support for all students in a physical education setting. iPads are portable and can be carried easily by both the teacher and student. There are specific applications made to help students with expressive communication, identifying feelings, and point out images for content. iPads can also be used to review skills on the screen before and during class. Video modeling, a recorded video of a teacher or student point of view performing a task, is a way to introduce new skills or review skills already learned. Some helpful apps include Proloquo to Go, Picture Planner, Coach's Eye, and Touch Chat. All of these apps use simple picture icons to help communicate to the student or help the student communicate to the teacher. Technology can also be very useful when assessing a student. General and adapted PE teachers can make checklists on an iPad and simply check off the criteria or skills that a student has performed correctly. Teachers can also record students' performing skills and rewatch and score the criteria later.
To review what we just covered,
the prevalence of autism spectrum disorder is dramatically increasing in schools, and therefore in physical education. Deficits in social communication and motor development are common characteristics of children with autism. No two children with autism learn in the same way. Every student needs individualization and differentiation when learning in physical education. Students with autism are visual learners. Structure and routine can facilitate their success in physical education. Social stories, activity schedules, PECS, task cards, visual warning devices, boundaries, visual demonstrations, and technology are helpful visual supports to incorporate into any physical education class, along with including motivation and rewards for students. All of the visual supports can be helpful tools for general and adapted PE teachers when assessing students with autism in PE. Students with autism can greatly benefit when adapted and general physical education teachers work with the student's parents, IEP team, and possibly the child to determine what accommodations will best align with each learner's needs throughout their school day and at home.